here in Alexandria, Virginia. We're at the Smart Girl Politics Summit here with Brandon Darby, Tea Party activist and Breitbart.com contributor. Good to see you. Finally, nice to meet you, Brandon.
Nice to meet you as well. Nice to meet you.
For people who don't know your story about what you did in 2008 at the RNC, just give us some background.
Well, in 2008, I had at that point been working undercover for a little while with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. And a number of folks set out to bomb the RNC, actually to shut it down by any means necessary. And the bombings, there's actually 3 different plots, and they were side things. You know, the overall issue is they were setting out to shut down the right of other Americans to assemble. And so law enforcement got involved, and that's what we did. And ultimately, I ended up testifying against some people. And left media and the left establishment basically just rewrote history on me and attacked me until I met Andrew Breitbart.
So this past week, I'm sure you saw it too. I saw a video released by who knows, black bloc anarchists about what they want to do in Tampa. And not only did they limit it to Tampa, they say the Republicans and Democrats are just as bad. Hey, let's focus on we'll go to Charlotte as well. They're talking about Molotov cocktails. They're talking about violence. Right. You saw this. You were part of this. You've infiltrated it. How realistic is this in 2012?
It's very realistic. I mean, what's going to happen is mainstream groups will come out and say that they are not connected and want no part of it. And they're not going to do it at the DNC. They say they're going to do it at the DNC, but it's an effort to make sure that what they're doing isn't used to help Republicans get elected. So it's very realistic. That's what they do. See, what they do is they beat a war drum. They give young people a version of history that makes it sounds very believable. It's a very seductive narrative, false narrative. And what it does is it makes young people who are caring and passionate and have all this energy, it makes them feel like they're Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader. And they're willing to do all kinds of things. And so when they beat the war drum enough, and then they do these tongue-in-cheek videos of Molotov cocktails, how to assemble Molotovs, and then they put out the addresses of Republican delegates and businesses that support the Republican Party and so forth, and corporations and the executives and the shareholders and all the things they do, they realize that though they cannot be held accountable legally and technically for what they've done, they know that out of a pool of 100 people, 3 or 4 of the young people are going to go crazy and are going to take one of the actions that they're insinuating for them to, asking for them to do, basically. So that it's a credible threat. You know, it's a credible threat, and it's unfortunate that we have an attorney general who has basically tied the hands of the FBI to do anything about these groups of people. They can assign 97 agents. Right? They can assign 97 agents to go see if Clemens did steroids with someone, but they can't assign any agents to deal with the swattings that many of the conservative activists and bloggers are going through right now, where left-of-center activists, and I do believe left-of-center people, are calling, spoofing numbers and calling the police departments in different jurisdictions and getting the SWAT team to come out, you know, these kind of things. So the attacks and the dehumanization that conservatives are under is at an unprecedented level. Back, in 2008, the dehumanization against conservatives wasn't nearly as great as it is now. You know, now we have a president who's actually beating the drum of racism, the war drums of racism, and stoking racial resentments just to stay elected and try to do anything to make sure that we don't talk about the economy and the things that this president's done wrong. Everything from bowing before a Saudi prince, and we could go on and on, right? So we have some obstacles we're facing as a movement of people and as Americans, because ultimately we're not like them. Like, we disagree with left of center politics usually. I do, at least, and I would die for the right of another American, even if I disagreed with them, to be able to assemble. And they actually think they can take that right away from us.
You also have a complicit media, because no matter how bad these black bloc protests have been, and we've seen destruction and spray paintings all over the place, no matter what, you don't see that. And it almost, when people think of Occupy, it's just a bunch of, they just against the man, but it's more violent than people will admit. For people like you, people like us in the media, the people who are the delegates, people going to Tampa, what should they do? How should they prepare for this and be safe?
Video cameras, video cameras, video cameras. That's all about video cameras. Ask your cousins or your brothers, if you don't know, or your children, how to take that video and upload it. It's all about video cameras. One of the things that in the Occupy Unmasked video, which is a movie coming out, it was one of Andrew's last projects. It's at occupyunmasked.com. One of the things was you saw the police officers at an Americans for Prosperity event. You saw people putting their children in front of the door, making a protest as the Occupy. You saw them pushing an elderly woman down on the ground.
That was
right?
the one with the lady with
Right,
the
right.
wagon, right?
Right, right. And people were like, well, why didn't the police make any arrests? And the reason the police didn't make any arrests is because the ACLU and the National Lawyers Guild and all the attorneys for these left of center activists, they call the city manager and the chief of police and they say ahead of time, look, our people have a right to protest, and if you interfere with that right to protest, if you arrest them, if you this, if you that, we're going to hold you accountable and file lawsuits on you. It's going to cost you $100 million. But see, our people don't do that too. We don't call the police departments, we don't call the chief of police, we don't call the city manager and say, our people have a right to assemble. If you allow people to infringe upon that right, we're going to sue the hell out of you. That's what we need to do too. You have to play back. You have to fight back. The McCain era, right? This McCain mentality of putting a hand in your pocket while someone else is knifing you, it didn't work out. And because of that attitude, that's why we have a leader like we have who appoints people who actually say that Mao Zedong is their ideological hero and their mentor. That's why we have this situation right now. In 2008, there were bomb plots, and the right media just figured, okay, we're not going to pay attention to it, ignore the crazies, and they'll go away. Well, it didn't work out so well. But now, in this time around, because of folks like Glenn Beck and Andrew Breitbart, and because David Horowitz screamed for decades, telling us to pay attention, warning, pay attention, we now realize that not paying attention to them has caused us some serious problems and put our republic in jeopardy, actually. So we're going to hold them accountable. Get your video cameras out, talk back, make sure that there's nothing any of those mask-wearing freaks do that hurts another person that you don't have video of. That's all you can do.
You know, the other thing, too, that you mentioned is the difference between the left and the right is people on the right, they would call someone like that out on this side. But the people on the left, the moderate leftists, don't call out the radical leftists. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because they're a very necessary part of what they do. Like Andrew used to call them Chardonnay sipping revolutionaries, right? Chardonnay revolutionaries. You know, when I was on the far left and I was working with Panthers and I showed up in New Orleans to help people, Michael Moore pulled out his checkbook and gave $200,000. Veterans for Peace did the same. Medea Benjamin did the same. You know, the Venezuelan government with Hugo Chavez and the Kennedy Foundation did the same. So the Rubbermaid Fortune did. I mean, it was across the board. They gave me money, and there I was, this radical guy with an AK-47, which I had a right to have, and I still own, and I'm glad I do. It's a great gun, you know. But we were kind of radical. It was a bunch of Panthers and eco-terrorists and me, you know, basically like helping people, and we were their Che-like romanticized figures, and that's what they do. They romanticize that dedication to challenge the empire, you know.
Right.
They
back to the Star Wars, the Death Star.
Back to the Star Wars analogy, man. You know, like they romanticize it and they support it, and it's ultimately a very necessary part of what they do. That's why they do that. You know, like if somebody from the Tea Party did something crazy, which no one has, by the way, that we've seen and I've been able to find on media, and I'm a media person. They would do everything they could to demonize it. When a young man. When a young man, by all intents and purposes, defended himself and shot another young man, we don't know what happened, but that's my point. We don't know. They made sure that he was a white guy, a racist white guy, and then even though he's a Hispanic guy, and then they made sure that the guy who got shot was a 12-year-old picture of him from when he was 12 years old was put out. I don't know what happened in the situation. No one else does either, except those two people, right? But the point is that that's what they do. It's an attempt at minimizing the crimes. When Mumia Abu-Jamal killed Daniel Faulkner in Philadelphia, it's a law enforcement officer.
Police officer.
No one ever says, on the left, they never say, well, Mumia didn't kill that officer, but it's a shame he died. They don't say that. They do what's called a horror defense, and they go, Mumia didn't kill that racist cop. Now, if you look at that guy's record, there's not a smidgen of evidence that he ever had anything wrong with him. You know, his family was a loving family. He was a loving cop. The people he interacted with had commended him. You know, nothing about his record was racist, but that's what they do. It's an attempt at subtly demonizing and dehumanizing the victim of the left, right, of leftist activists, and it's an attempt at minimizing the crime of the leftist activists. My own case, George Soros and PBS funded a documentary attacking me, glorifying and deifying the two guys who made bombs as though they were somehow innocent before they met me. You know, even though I was working undercover, wired up, all the evidence in the world is there, but it doesn't matter what the evidence says. Never mind the changing narratives. Never mind any of that. It's just an issue of dehumanizing conservative thought, dehumanizing anyone who supports a limited constitutional governance, is not caring, because I believe that people help people better than a federal government can. And you believe that, and that's what we believe. And they frame it as we don't care about the poor, or we somehow don't care. You know, this is what they do. And thanks to social media and the fact that a few what were basically super PACs for Democratic candidates like ABC, NBC, CBS, right. Thank God that they don't control the narrative any longer. We also can speak back, you know.
Last question. I know Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote. I follow your Twitter feed, so I know how important she is to you. And I finally get to interview her at CPAC Chicago. The whole True the Vote thing, you know, when you talk about the need for voter integrity in this country, the stories she was telling are unbelievable. What should people be looking out for in this election cycle?
Again, Michelle Obama herself said this election could very well come down to a few thousand votes. You know, let's just keep that in mind. So what you should do, and what I suggest to people, is go to truethevote.org. You know, Google Catherine Engelbrecht, Google her, put a Google alert for her, and defend her, because she is attacked unfairly. We called out the Houston Chronicle on Breitbart.com. They claimed that she was under a DOJ investigation for blah, 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 blah. And then when I wrote the writer, he said, well, I just heard that. And he's like, but you can't publish this email. And I was like, good luck with that, buddy. Right. You know, he's like, well, you'll ruin this relationship. I was like, yeah. And I just published it. I was like, look at this, man. Look at what they do to this woman. So the Democratic establishment, with their left media super PAC, basically just attacks the absolute hell out of this woman, and she is one of the best people I've ever met. She's one of the best people. Andrew Breitbart introduced me to her, and he thought she was one of the best people, and anyone who knows her thinks that. Her group, True the Vote, it came out of King Street Patriots. They are great people. They're attacked constantly. People need to defend them. People need to leave comments on news stories that attack them. People need to pay attention to what's going on. And that's the best vehicle you can do. And if you volunteer with True the Vote, you'll find out that you can go and you can actually poll watch and make sure that things are done appropriately. And there's a system for reporting crimes, which they do a lot of. There's a piece I wrote about 6 months ago called Voter ID Laws Racist or Reasonable. It was a joint venture with Town Hall and Breitbart.com. And that's a great piece to explain what Catherine Engelbrecht is dealing with and what the issue of voter ID really is about. Thank you.
Brandon Darby, thank you, sir.
Thank you.